I've been painting freehand my entire life. I honestly don't know any other way to do it. When it comes to seeing something in life, I just want to paint it freehand. I've never wanted to use a projector. I've never wanted to trace. I've never wanted to use grids or guides or any of those other tricks. I just really enjoy painting from life and just using my eyes to figure out the proportions, figure out the shapes, figure out the relationships of those shapes. And I have 3 tips today that I think will really help you all improve your freehand drawing. And it's really straightforward, but it's some of those things where you just maybe forget to do some of these. You may be coming from a background where you're used to tracing, where you're used to using grids. But if you use these 3 tips, I think you will come around, you will see the allure of painting freehand, and your style will improve because of it. I find that when you use tracing, when you use guides and grids, you get very tight with all your brush strokes. And today's painting is one I did in about 2 hours. You can check out the full video over on my Patreon account if you want to see the process. And the pose is actually kind of unique. I really like the pose, and I really like how the final loose version turned out. So check this out. It's only a 10-minute video. You can see the full process here sped up about 8 times, I think, and it will help you figure out how I go about freehand drawing. Now, the first step I'd like to talk about is starting with big shapes. No details, just look at the overall composition. So I have this reference image on the top left for this painting, and I'm just looking at it as a whole. I'm not looking at it like there's a person in there. I'm just looking at the shapes, the overall big shapes, the shapes that make up the shadows, the shapes that make up the midtones and the highlights. It really simplifies things down when you initially start painting. That way you can gradually check things as you go, make sure that everything's looking right, and then by the time you get to those details that you need, you can paint with confidence knowing that you're working on those little details, you're working on the fingers, and you're confident that you're not wasting your time. So how I did this was pretty straightforward. I started with some basic line work. I wasn't worried about it being exact. I just wanted to get something down so I could start comparing it to the reference image. I would squint when I needed to simplify things down, but I would lightly sketch just with my brush and some black paint and just put some really basic brush strokes in. And then once you get the overall line work in, that's when you can start doing the shape of shadows. That's my next part, is I'll do the shape of shadows, start with the darks first, then work into the midtones, and then go into the highlights. I usually break it down into about 3 different levels of value just to get started. And then once that's done, I start working on the medium shapes and then the details. And there is always that ugly phase, but just take a step back, constantly look at it for the overall shapes and those medium shapes and those smaller shapes as you work your way through the progression. The next part I want to talk about is using different visual measuring techniques. I like to use my brush handle a lot of the time just to see where center is. So one of the biggest anchors I think for a painting is figuring out where center is. So if you can get the center and the edges, the outer edges of an overall composition figured out, that will really help you get things in the right spot. So for this painting, that little bright spot in the middle of her body, that is one of those areas that's really almost in the dead center. I'd say the right side of that was the center, and I used that for a lot of referencing. So I'd see what lines up below it, above it, to the left and right to make sure that things measure out correctly and those relationships are locked in. Now for the third step, I think this one is pretty obvious, but there are different ways to observe your painting. So taking a step back and looking at it from different distances is a huge thing to help observe where your painting is maybe going wrong, but you can't start doing this until you have some paint down. So once you have all the main shapes in place and the medium shapes, the smaller details, this is where every step along the way you should be taking a step back as often as possible. And if you get this feeling like something is just off, then that's when you start going back and forth with your eyes and seeing where the problems lie. And it could be something that's just fooling your eyes. There are a lot of things that will easily fool a person's eyes. When you first start to learn to freehand draw, you got to get past the idea that you're looking at anything in particular, like looking at a body or looking at a face. Just look at it as if it's a bunch of shapes that are made up of different tones and how those organize, and just observe it in that way, and your eyes will slowly get less fooled by things that are easy to trick you, like the length of a nose, the length of a leg, the fingers, the angles. So many different things can fool you as far as what you think you're seeing and what is really there. So just observe as much as you can, take steps back. The further back you can get, the better. So those are really the top 3 things I think that will really help you if you want to learn to freehand draw. When you freehand draw, you get a really interesting, unique picture. You can start to paint looser. You'll start to feel confident painting looser and having brush strokes. And like this final painting, I think it really turned out well. Even though you can't see the hands exactly, you can't see the feet and all the detail, the general idea is there, and it creates this almost abstract look at the female figure. And if I wanted to, I could have put some more detail on certain things to make things read a little bit clearer, but as an exercise that took less than 2 hours, these are really great to help you out with your progress as far as freehand drawing. Let me know what you think. Feel free to write some comments down if you have any questions, and I'd love to help you out. Again, check out my Patreon account if you want to learn more about my process. Every tutorial I do is freehand in nature, so you're going to learn to freehand a lot of different subject matter. Please like, subscribe, all that good stuff. Now I'm just going to go ahead and put some music on so you can watch the rest of this process play out. Thanks for checking out this video. I will talk to you again next week. All right, bye.